Well, hello there, I'm Detroit. In this video, right there in the corner, I told you how I was kind of forced to switch from using Photoshop for my digital art to using Clip Studio Paint instead. And while I was forced to do so by Adobe, in the end I'm kinda glad I changed. I'm starting to really like Clip Studio, even if there are still some tools and functionalities I have yet to master. With all of that said, I am glad to kick off this new arc in my arts journey, the Clip Studio arc, with this digital painting. This is a very quick speed paint. It only took 17 minutes, sketch not included. I don't really remember when or why I sketched this very comic booky dude and posed with a dramatic angle. I know I sketched it in Procreate and I thought it was a good experimental subject for testing brushes. Basically, this painting was simply a way to test a couple of brush combinations in Clip Studio, and I settled on this pastel/chalk brush that I found very appealing, especially using wacky colors in combination. But let's talk about the brushes for now and the colors later. Basically, since I've moved from Photoshop to Clip Studio, I imported all my brushes, but they all went into the same folder, and I spent what feels like hours moving the subtools around. Because Clip Studio has a brush tool, but also pencil, airbrush, effects, and so on, when in Photoshop I was used to putting all the brushes under the same tool umbrella, so I took some time to clean them. Not all parameters for brushes are translated well between Photoshop and Clip Studio, so I had to redo a bunch of my personal brushes I use often, and some brushes behave differently now, but I like them as much if not more like this. That's the thing. In my 6 or so years of using Photoshop, I downloaded a lot of different brush sets, like hundreds of them. I used a few of them in certain projects, but I mostly always used the same ones in all of my paintings, with the occasional exceptions. But because of the workflow difference between Photoshop and Clip Studio, it made sense to clean everything here, and also to make sure my most used brushes behave the same way they used to, or as close as possible. One example was a brush whose texture I really like, that I sometimes use for a first pass at a background. But that brush ended up not working at all in Clip Studio, and I didn't find a way to make it work. So I was looking at theoretically similar brushes to replace that one, and I ended up finding this pastel brush. Now, as I mentioned, this chunky and greasy pastel style works very well with colors that are off the rails. But are they really? Behind the nonsensical use of yellow, blue, purple, green, and so on, there is a method. I'm saying all this because it's very fun to experiment with the limits of the color theory, and it's always surprising and cool when you don't know if it's gonna work or not. So basically, I wanted my focus to be on the strong shoulder and arm of this dude, which is why the whole arm is in yellow. It's very bright and contrasts a lot with the muted background. On the softer side and less contrasty, you have the bluish white shirt and the bluish green pants. These are closer to the tones of the background, which will remain close to very desaturated blue. The arm is in yellow, which is obviously the focus. Then the shadow of the arm is in red. Human skin tends to go towards red when in shadows because of the subsurface scattering. It makes more sense and feels less uncanny. And this is also why the transition between the red and the yellow goes through this salmon pink tone to blend the two a bit. And then we have the highlights. For the highlights, you want something that contrasts with everything else, like neon pink. And what better tone to balance the neon pink for the highlights on the other side? Cyan blue. Cyan and pink look so good together. It's a very common color scheme. It's also often called bisexual lighting, which I think is fantastic. Cyan and pink is my second favorite color combination, after blue and orange. And honestly, looking at this digital painting, I'm so happy. Faded blue tones for the background, saturated orangey yellow for the focus, and bisexual lighting for the highlights. My favorite combinations all right there in this greasy, chalky pastel painting. I hope you like this speed paint that I kept on the dirty side, as far as cleanliness of sketch, lines and edges go. I really enjoy Clip Studio, and I'm finding a new freedom in the program, like some spark that I lost a while back with Photoshop. Before I let you go on with your life, I want to mention a brief something about my latest video, this one. I spent a while talking about how I wanted to find a job because I had been unemployed for almost a year. Well, 2 days after that video came out, I finally got a positive reply from a company I've been interviewed at a couple times. So I'm glad to announce that I am now officially employed. All it took is me complaining and it happened. What sort of message is that? Anyway, all is good in the world. Like, subscribe, and comment with your favorite color combination. And I'll see you soon. Have a great day. Bye!